As it happens, I'm sick. You might be wondering why the background in every single one of my videos is different. I'll tell you why. It's because I can't figure it out. Anyway, so getting to the book. Fault Lines by Emily Itami. I picked this book up at a 2-for-1 hardcover books sale at Barnes & Noble like 2 or 3 years ago. Okay, so I bought it in 2021. So I've had this book for 2 years and I have never picked it up since the day I bought it. I've moved twice since then. It's only 213 pages. It's a very fast read. It's pretty big font. Really, really short chapters. There's 42 chapters. So a lot of the chapters are like a page, which makes the book go really fast. So this follows the protagonist. Her name is Mizuki, and she is a married woman with 2 kids. She has a 4-year-old and a 10-year-old. And she is like a pretty traditional Japanese, she's Japanese. This is in Japan, by the way. She's a pretty traditional Japanese housewife, but that was never really her plan at all. She was pursuing music when she was like in college and after college, and she had studied abroad. She's from a really, really, really tiny rural area in Japan, and her dad like got an idea that she would study abroad, so she studied abroad with a family in New York, and it like simply changed the course of her life. The story is told from her when she has her 4-year-old and her 10-year-old, but it goes back and has like kind of flashbacks that kind of make up her whole story. She, through the course of this book, meets a guy who seems interested in her, and she's really interested in him. She tells him that she's married, and he's like, I know, that's okay. And they just continue to meet for quite a while. They do end up having an affair, and carrying it on for a little while. And then, by the way, this is spoilers. The spoilers are about to start. She, as you can tell, the book is called Fault Lines, and she has like a fear of earthquakes. She gets in an earthquake in the subway, which was like her big fear, with her 2 kids at the end of the book. She really came to the conclusion like, I can't have everything I want. Her husband was, and I'm not saying that this makes it okay, but her husband was very, like, neglectful, I guess is the right word. He was not a good husband. He was a really good father, but he was not a good husband to her, so she was kind of looking for warmth somewhere else, and that's how she ended up with this other guy. But she came to the realization that, like, having this little fun or whatever, it simply is not worth it. Like, even if this is the love of my life, even if this is the most, like, whatever, it's not worth it for my kids. Because really, truly, truly in this world, the only thing I care about is my kids. And I need to do what's right by them. And her relationship with her husband was, like, good enough that they had a great, like, family life. So it wasn't, like, bad for her to stay with him or anything. It was kind of about, like, a little bit about, like, her double life. She never really hid anything from her husband, but like he never asked or cared or anything, so she didn't need to. So that's just kind of the brief overall premise. I found, if you look at reviews of this, you'll see a lot of this same sentiment, that Emily Itami, the author, she writes the experience of young motherhood so well. The frustration of newborn stage, frustration with your spouse, like even if they're amazing, your frustration with your spouse. She writes it so well. It was like tugging at my heart when I was reading this. You know, feeling a little bit of camaraderie with this lady and how she was feeling like she was really different from all like good Japanese wives for such and such and such reason. But like all of the things that she does are like things that happen to me every single day and every, reader. And it's like, oh, it's so validating. However, of course, I can't relate with or like condone or anything her like having an affair. And one of the saddest parts of the book was just the knowledge that you learned about her husband when they were married. And like, he was really an amazing guy. Attentive and funny and straightforward and just like all the things that you would want in a guy. He was all of those things. And then like over time, you could blame his job. He was just like worn down by life, and he was just like 100% uninterested. And this new guy who she met, she was thinking like, wow, he's so perfect. But I couldn't help but draw parallels between her husband when she met him, and this new guy now. And it's like, how could she, if she were to make the decision to leave her husband and be with this guy, how could she ever trust somebody to not change in the way that her husband did? I mean, because she often would think like, do I blame myself? Was it me who made my husband this way? Like, is it because I'm not perfect enough, or I'm not whatever enough? He's like bored with me and bored with our life. But there's no way to know if somebody wouldn't become that person, even if they seem perfect in the beginning. So it was kind of like sad. And also she talked a little bit about, which I loved, her talking about like how you change as a parent, and how sometimes it feels like you don't know if that person that you were before is like gone, or if they're just like waiting for your kids to get older or whatever. Like, you don't know if the things that you enjoyed before you had kids, like, you won't enjoy them anymore, because certainly you have changed. Or if it's just like, oh, I just don't do that now because I have kids, and, you know, I'll just go back to that someday. Because there is many things that I like don't have any interest in anymore. But then there's also things where it's like, I could never do that with kids. So I'd have to, you know, wait until they're older to, you know, experience that kind of thing again. So I just loved her insight on all of that. So I had there were just so many like excerpts of her just like absolutely hitting the nail on the head when it comes to parenting. And I mean, she's Japanese living in Japan. There's so many different things between our lives, but there are so many similarities. So here's an excerpt. This is the part where she was talking about very early in the book, page 11. She's talking about how her marriage, like, she could tell it was like falling apart, and she would cry a lot. Like, she wouldn't really be able to put her finger on exactly what was the issue, but she was way more emotional. And she says, I wasn't much of a crier in the past. Things would happen that hurt like hell, and I would just keep going, folding it all in and marching stoically on. Then there was a year or two after each of the children was born, when I felt as if whatever it was that separated me from the rest of the world had been ripped away, leaving all my surfaces completely porous. All the feelings in the world were in excruciating technicolor, and I had no method of filtering them out. I cried at TV ads and at the children's first steps, at old people navigating the supermarket, and pigeons wooing in Yoyogi Park. It was exhausting. Her husband Tatsu thought I'd lost my mind, which I had in a way, the older, steelier one, and had replaced it with an infinitely impressionable sponge. Luckily, time and sleep grew a little of the armor back, so that until just a year or so ago, I reacted appropriately to wildlife documentaries and photographs of other people's children. Very accurate to how it is. Then she explains her relationship with her husband and kind of like maybe what's gone wrong. And the really like kind of beautiful thing about it is that she has a lot of sympathy for him. I will say that he has an affair as well with one of his clients, but it's very strange. And I know that potentially like attitudes around extramarital affairs in Japan are maybe different than they are here, but she mentions it in passing, and like we don't even know when it happened. She just says like, oh, something when my husband slept with one of his clients. And it was like, wait, is that after this book ended, or was that before this book started, or when did that happen? It's like she had no emotions surrounding it whatsoever. So she's talking about how she's been with her husband for 16 years, and she felt like she picked him really carefully. Like, he really seemed like the perfect guy when they met. She says, I thought I'd chosen well. For over a decade, we went to bed together, talked before we fell asleep, spooned in the winter, you know, the little things. Now when he's finished reading the paper or watching the baseball game while checking work emails, he heads to bed alone, his mind on brushing his teeth quickly, unsmiling, not seeing his own reflection in the mirror, and then throwing himself into bed, where I will find him lost, facing away from me with an arm flung over his head. It sounds like she has a little bit of sympathy for the fact that he's just like, in my opinion, it sounds like he like has depression. Like, he's not having a good life, but it's almost like she feels like she might be the issue, or she's responsible for it a little bit. This excerpt shows a little bit of that sympathy even more. When it first got like this, I felt bad for him. Work in Tokyo is inhumane, and after Tatsu was promoted, his mind never left the office, and his body only rarely. The children have never known him any other way. I did all the things I was supposed to do. Waited up for him and cooked and didn't complain. Sent him photographs when he missed the children's first laughs, first words, first steps. We'd talked about work before we were married, or at least I thought we had, but maybe it had actually been a conversation about something else. He lamented that he'd barely known his father because he'd worked so hard, and envied me of my father, who was available, even if it was just because our home and his shop were one and the same, and I was always under my dad's feet. It was naive of me to think that expressing your distaste for something means you can resist all the forces of family and society that propel you toward it. It's just really sad. It was really sad. And I felt that she was really sad about the whole situation. And then when it comes to like young babyhood, she's talking about her kids. Ari turned 10 last year. Aki is 4. They're both at school now. I don't know what happened. Back when they were tiny, sighing mothers of older children told me to appreciate it while it lasted. And I, starved of sleep, cursed them and their failure to recall anything practical that would actually help me. Now, I don't want to admit that I can't for the life of me remember when they started sleeping through the night or eating solids, or that the crooning softness of their babyhoods really did disappear in the blink of an eye. Sometimes the days last forever, and still the weeks and months and years go whizzing unstoppably by. It's so true. And very sad. There's another one. This is page 46, just talking about motherhood. There have been periods when I found myself submerged in motherhood for years at a time, lost myself willingly in the maze of my children's needs and triumphs. Then suddenly one day I come to, catch sight of myself in the mirror and think, what was I doing again? In a way that's totally appropriate if you went into the living room to fetch something and had a distracting thought about an old lover, but not ideal if your reverie has lasted 3 years. Well, so anyway, in the book, she ends up kind of breaking it off with her guy, and it seems like potentially she gets into a better relationship spot with her husband. But I did really like the last scene of the earthquake. It was so, mom power-y, and I like that. But at the very, very end, she had she got a call in the middle of the night. She couldn't sleep, of course, that night. She got a call in the middle of the night, and it was from the guy who she had already broken up with, and he was like, are you okay? And she was like, yeah, are you okay? And he was like, yeah, and she was like, I was really worried about you, and he was like, I was really worried about you. And then I think they just, hung up. But that goes to show, it wasn't over, she just ended it, or the feelings weren't over, she just ended it just for the sake of harmony in her life with her kids. So, all in all, I really liked the book. I would recommend it to moms, specifically. I felt that it was just so good at young mom life. It did such a good job with that. And this is her debut novel. Amazing writing. Really well done. Really fun. Really made you think. And I just really liked it a lot. I'm reading some other books right now that I'm really excited about. And that's all I have to say. If you've read it, what did you think about it? I hope that you liked it. Let me know. Peace out.